Hello there, and welcome to my second video chat. I'm Bo, Art by Bo, and what we're doing here really is it's nothing really special. Basically, I'm sitting here, I'm drawing, I'm working on this tiger still. I've been working on it for quite some time. It's almost 9 hours on this. Really surprised because I expected it to probably take 6 to 8 hours or so, but it's decided to be a little bit more difficult than I had expected as far as detail goes. And it's got its good and its bad. I mean, it's like, really? It's taken a lot longer than I expected. But on the other hand, it's really enjoyable. I've never done a tiger before. This is my first tiger. And the whole process here of actually just doing this tiger has been, it's very relaxing, very meditative, if you will. And I really like it. I've been enjoying this. Um, I do kind of wish that it would maybe be moving a little faster, I admit. But at the same time, it's like I said, it's really enjoyable. So what do I do here? Really, I don't really do much here other than like you get to see me draw. You get to see what goes into the works that I do. And in the process of that, hopefully, it will help you when you look at other people's art as well to say, wow, that might have taken a lot of work. Um, But in this particular case, it's really just sort of a way for, me to show you how these things come to develop. And also, I chat. It's not even really a chat, to be honest. It's more of a monologue because a chat seems to indicate that you have something to say, and well, it's a recorded video, so it's hard for you to actually participate in that. But anyway, so let's see. What am I doing here? Um, I should warn you in advance. It's a little on the difficult side to do this for me, believe it or not. You would think that it shouldn't be that hard. It's just talk while drawing, and I love to do both. Um, but it turns out that talking while drawing is a lot more difficult than you would think. And I think it has to do with, I mentioned that this is very meditative. And when you're meditating, you sort of get lost in what's going on. And when you're talking, you have to not get lost in what's going on because you have to have a sense of, staying just slightly ahead of at least what you want to say, and and then be able to find the words to say it. Not so easy for me right now. And I imagine it probably has something to do with uh, how the brain is activated when you're drawing. There's a wonderful book out there, and anyone who's interested in art at all, and I mean really at all, and understanding art or even understanding artists is a drawing on the right side of the brain. I forget who the author is, but she talks about the difference between left brain and right brain a bit. And when we think in terms of what artists are doing when they're looking at something and trying to reproduce it, they are largely working on what is called the right side of the brain. The right side of the brain is, or I should say, sort of the left side of the brain. We tend to be left brain dominant in society, if you will. And the left side of the brain is the side of the brain that functions more analytically and symbolically. So when you're looking at um, things with the left side of your brain, what you're seeing is kind of what you think you should be seeing, which is to say that, for example, if I'm looking at an eye and I want to draw an eye, it's like, oh, I know what an eye looks like. An eye basically looks like this. And so we start to kind of see with that sort of preconceived notion of what it's supposed to look like. And then if we try to draw that, it ends up looking kind of like a generic eye rather than like an eye, that the eye, I'll call it. The left side of the brain is, it's kind of like close enough. We live in that world, that symbolic world, which is, fine for the most part, and it's actually really helpful. It's like if you're walking down a hallway and you go through a door. all you really need to notice, if you will, is you just sort of need to know that, oh, there's a doorway there, and that means I need to go between those two things, which are like the portal itself and the under the top thing, and don't hit my head on that. Um, and then you're through, and that's it. You don't need any more. And when we're talking about the brain processing things, go with the minimum amount necessary, because there are only so many cognitive resources that you have, and you can only take in so much of your environment, which means that, if you're paying attention to the doorway and the shape of the doorway, you're not running into the doorway. If, however, you're walking down the hallway and something distracts you and you spend cognitive resources on that, and you're like, what was that to the left? And then bam, you run into the doorway. Yes, I've done that before. I do run into things periodically just because I'm not paying attention because something distracts me. But generally speaking, all we need to know is symbolically doorway, recognize what it is, and, we're good to go, and we move on with life. But when we're drawing and we're really trying to notice what's going on in front of us, then it's really important to, wait a second, I gotta pick the pencil, this one. It's really important for us to see more specifically of what is happening in front of us. And the right side of the brain is much more detail oriented. It's the side of the brain that when I look at one person's eye, I see that it is not only that person's eye, but it's also not this other person's eye, because the devil is in the detail, if you will. And I recognize then, when I'm using that part of my brain, that this is not how it looks over here. It doesn't follow my symbolic representation. Instead, it has these specific characteristics, and trying to see that. So when I am drawing here, this tiger, I might say, okay, I have a sense of what a tiger looks like, and that's what I don't want to draw. Instead, I want to try to draw the tiger that I see in front of me sitting on my laptop. Okay, there is not a tiger actually sitting on my laptop. It's actually a picture of a tiger on my laptop monitor, just to be clear, so you don't have to worry about calling anyone because I'm in danger because there's a tiger in my house. But anyway, so the thing is that left side of the brain, right side of the brain. Left side of the brain is more detail oriented. It actually sees, what is in front of you, and that's what you want when you're trying to draw like this. You don't want to basically be making it up, shall we say. It's really tempting, and in fact, there are indeed a lot of places in which I do make it up. Right now, for example, I am not drawing every single tiny hair exactly like it is shown on that picture right in front of me. I am, however, trying to capture general tones and get a strong sense of this is indeed that tiger right there. And I do that, through the details, and I do that by catching, and a lot of that is the details, even the, I don't know what I want to call it, even those little, what seem like minor details aren't necessarily so minor, because it's like there's a little story to tell inside of the picture about this one being, and I'm trying to capture that. And so, but it's got to be unique to the one in front of me. And so, like, for example, here, I don't know if you can see this very well. I don't have my camera up on my laptop, but right in here in the tiger face, see if I can pull it up. See if I can capture it. You see that, like, right there? It kind of goes along the nose, and there's like a little crevice there, or it's like a little shadowy area, and then that little stripe mark there, and then kind of the way it goes into that. That's the stuff that really, it's like it pulls it together, because this pulls this, all of this, and this is actually all really connected in its own way in the picture. If you were to see the reference, you can kind of see how it's all kind of connected as it's flowing in there, and it gives a certain continuity. If I look at it and I say stripe, nose, side of nose, cheek, whatever, all this other stuff, and just start putting things in there where I think they're supposed to be, I can easily lose that connectivity. And it's those spatial elements That's what the right side, there we go, spatial. It's the spatial elements. That's what the right side of the brain specializes in, if you will. Um, so let me go back to my thing here. I have to go back to my reference. Um, so what we want to do then is we want to try to capture as many of those little bitty details. And they don't have to be exact necessarily, especially when we're dealing with something like a tiger. They don't have to be exact, but it really helps to have them as close as possible, because I can guarantee you that this picture is always going to look a little different, at least where I'm at my skill level right now, than the one in front of me, because it's not always going to be exact. I do use a grid, so that helps me to place things, but it never does the work for you. You have to have the eye and the skill to be able to pull that all out, ultimately. So yeah, so drawing on the right side of the brain. Oh, and I think that's why it makes it so difficult to draw and talk at the same time, because where is the language center? The language center is on the left side of the brain. And so when the language center is on the left side of the brain, and I'm trying to do stuff that specializes the right side of the brain, it's like it's pulling back and forth and very difficult to do. So I'm actually working a little slower when I do this. And it's okay. I don't mind that. It's like I said, it's kind of meditative. But I lost my eraser. There it is. Now I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. It's about, I was talking about effectively not being able to talk. And lo and behold, look what happens. I'm not able to talk. I find that amusing, but I don't know, maybe you don't. It's the things like that, small things in life that are so awesome. It's like, really? Did that just happen to me? Oh, how cool. So another thing is, as I don't know what my volume is like. I had to adjust it on for the last one. I actually had to adjust the volume when I switched it over to like Windows Movie Maker. And didn't even know I could do that. I was a little worried because when I watched the video, it really was way too quiet. Actually, I can't even hardly hear myself. So hopefully this one turns out okay still. But anyway, a little bit about this is I don't know if you noticed this, but I had a layer of graphite down here, which was 2B. Then I put another layer down here of 2B. Now I'm actually putting another layer of 2B. When I'm drawing, there are multiple layers of graphite here, and I don't know if you can see it as well, but that's a lot of what brings the darkness through. I don't press very hard at all when I'm working with my pencils, because the paper has a tooth, and that tooth, I like to think of it as like a comb. If you look at a comb, you got all these little teeth. And think of that as shorter, and whenever you're running the pencil over the page, what happens is it's catching the top of those teeth, and it's like pulling the graphite off, and that graphite's kind of trickling off. And if I push down on the pencil and put pressure on the pencil, then what happens is that tooth gets mashed down. And then the graphite goes underneath fell into the little between the teeth. When the tooth gets pushed down, just it's like this. When the tooth, you get graphite down there like the eraser, and the tooth gets pushed over like that, then you can't get down into that graphite. It's trapped in there effectively, like forever. So, well, unless like you light it on fire, then I guess it's gone. But I mean, don't do that. But you have an eraser, like this kneadable eraser here. What you do with this is when the teeth are up, this kneadable, it's like a little putty. I can take this, let's see, there's a good spot here. Is there a good spot? Right here. I can take this and I can drop this on there. And I can start tapping it. And that picks up the graphite and pulls it off of the paper. So that now I've got like a white spot there. If I push down really hard though, or even not even really hard, just if I just press down and put some pressure in there, and I can cover that right back up, then that, like I said, it traps it under there. The eraser can't get to it, and so you're always going to have a certain amount of gray there that you can never get rid of. Once you get lead on the graphite on the paper, generally speaking, you're never going to get the white, the perfect white, if you will, that you started off with. It's not going to happen again. But you can come kind of close. One of the things that I'm struggling with this picture, actually, is that wait a second, what's this? Okay, put that there. Is that right here in the eye, I did a really good job of kind of keeping the white white. And so it has a certain texture and feel to it that pops that I really like, because I prefer to have stronger contrast in my pictures if at all possible. Over in this area, I kind of made a mistake because I was putting in the fur and I made it dark. I'm like, uh-oh, now what, right? So then I went to pick it all up, and it's still white, but at the same time, it's not the same kind of white that this is, and it's not going to be really. So one of my questions is, do I leave this white, stark white? Because I kind of like that. Not quite like the reference, but I like the way that it draws to that eye, into those eyes, keeping that white. And then just do all the other whites kind of like this, where you can see more of the fur effect. I think that's probably where I'm going to go with this. At the moment, it seems like more than likely the wisest possible choice. And another thing is, when you're doing the realistic pictures like I like to do here, like I've been doing, I should say, and I do like to do them, when you're doing that, you want to stick to the reference. You really want it to be like the reference. But at the same time, I think you need to take certain kinds of liberties with it in order to make it feel right. For example, in the picture, it's a nice lit tiger that I have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the black background in, and then I'm going to start pulling the dark, so it's like the tiger's coming out of the darkness. That has nothing to do with reference, okay? But I think it'll make for a much cooler picture. It'll be more right as far as like what I envision it to be. So right doesn't mean like right and wrong, but it's more in line with the feeling that I want to evoke with this. The tiger that's kind of slipping in. So that's kind of the plan with this anyway. I hope I didn't. That's not considered a spoiler. By the teeth, I don't like drawing teeth. They're such a pain. Although that's not even really a teeth. This is like tongue, actually. Teeth are down here. But I'm not the best at them, so we'll make it work. It'll work just fine. And then, of course, but I was talking about the whites out here. What's going to make the whites here work as whites more is when I go back through, one of the things that I'm going to do, this is orange, right? But one of the things I'm going to want to do is I'm actually going to take a darker pencil, for example, and I'm going to start putting in darker marks, and I'm going to start darkening these areas around the white. So like this, basically, to give you an idea of what I'm doing. Little tiny hairs and kind of pulling the darks in, and it's the contrast that you kind of see happening in there. That's what's going to make the whites look like it's white, because if you actually look at most whites in a picture, they're not really white. They're often like a gray. It might even be a dark gray, but you put a dark gray next to a black line and black blotch, and it's going to look kind of white. So, and yes, there are whiskers here that I'm going to pull in. And this is a great tool. I got to talk about this really quickly. This is a great tool. This is I think it's called the Tombow eraser. And what you can do with this is you cut it into like a little wedge, and I clean it like so. I don't know, can you see that? Clean it like so. I don't know where the camera goes anymore. I forgot. And then like that. And then I can take this, and this is the coolest thing ever. I wish I had this before, but you can put it here and pull that. And suddenly you get like a little whisker cutting into the dark. So like that, and like that. So you've got these whiskers, and this is how one of the ways that I pull out little bits of hair. Right, I tap that on there. So I've got, and again, it kind of goes back to this, but the reason I like this is because it's such a fine point. This, I can do something similar. But I don't want this in here right now, so I'm gonna fill that back in. That'll be for later when I can actually work with that. But this is for like pulling out hairs, and it's great because I used to try to like leave blank spots for the hair. I was terrible at that. I was so bad at being able to do that because I would lose them, and then I would just go over it, and I'm like, oh, where did it go? And then I can't really see it, and it was just not good. But since I got the Tombow eraser, that has made a world of difference. And the stroke that I use, by the way, is really like this. I was taught this way back in Parkland Community College by Don Lake. And what you're doing is you're basically, it's a line, and it's very light. And you can actually take, and you can start with a really, this is a 2B pencil. And so you can start with a really light shade, and you can slowly add pressure. This is one of the exercises we did. We slowly added pressure until it slowly faded into a dark line. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's really light. It's harder to do with a 2B. We had to start with like a light white, if you will, and go down to dark as the pencil will go. So you're fading. It's like a gradient basically, with one lead, and that was hard. It's a lot harder than you think because you have to lay one line and the next line right on top of it, almost, because you want overlap if possible. And then when you did this and you get your basic tone, one of the things you would do is, because you might have like lines or whatever kind of going through, it might look kind of liney, then you go slightly off, and then you go back over it. And that's how you remove those lines that are in there. So then it looks more of a, it's the word I'm looking for, like a tone than a line. And the goal, according to Don Lake, back in 1989, was really the eradication of all lines. You don't want any lines. It's all rendering, shading, what do you want to call it? I will say, though, this takes a bit of time to do it this way. I know that there are people who use blending tools. They use like, I don't know, tortillas, and I'm not a huge fan of those because, again, it goes back to crushing paper, crushing the tooth, and not a huge fan of that. I do use a brush. So like especially on the fur, and whenever I do some more fur a little bit later, I'm going to actually use a brush. Actually, you know what? We'll just go down to the fur here. So I didn't use the brush. I use the brush here. So part of what we do when we use the brush is, okay, I do like, so I did some basic like this, right? I did some markings like fur-like markings. Kind of abstract, to be honest. Well, I just talked about how you want to draw what's in front of you, and then I'm going to abstract symbolic stuff. Yes, I know. But for a lot of the fur, it works because I'm not drawing each and every one of the hairs. But anyway, so then what I do is take the pencil, or this eraser like this, and just sort of like draw it and tap it. And what this does is this kind of pulls up highlights. So you've got all these little highlights in there, right? And they start to pop out a little bit. And I wanted to look at the now this is another thing too. I wasn't looking at the reference when I did that. And now the result of that is I've made those strokes too long. I want to make these strokes, as I'm pulling out hairs, much shorter, like that, okay? And they don't have to have much of a rhyme or reason, okay? But they do need to have some sense of something, that's kind of realistic. Now that I've erased, now what I do is I'm going back through with a darker pencil, because we have basically three values. You've got your light, you've got your where your light hits, you've got your normal colory thing, and then you're where it's more shadowed, okay? So then what I want to do is I want to go back with the 2B, and I'm going to start adding some hatches in there like fur, okay? Nothing too crazy, but just some sort of like lines like that, and they're kind of random-ish, but I do like crossing over and scribbles sometimes like this or whatnot, you know. Like that's a longer one, so I'm going to scribble through that one. I'm going to cut that line to make it shorter. So I said I made those lines too short or too long, those eraser lines. I'm going to make them a little shorter by cutting through them with the shadow marks, okay? So now I've got that in there. Now that I got the shadows in there, I've got the highlights in there really quickly, because the highlight is picking up the soft blur that comes from the brush. Then I put in some shadows, right? Then I grab my teeny weeny brush. Here we go. I can't get around my pen. Okay, this teeny weeny brush here, cotton ball. And now I'm going to do this again. And now what I'm doing is I'm knocking all the graphite back down into those highlighted areas with the kneadable eraser, okay? And typically what I'll do is I will typically go over it 3 times. I've done it twice now. I'm sorry, I did the base layer and then the highlights, and then I did another shadow base layer and highlights, and I'm going to do one more. I'm going to basically do it one more time. Not as much this time. So like that. And what's happening is this is actually layering these lines on top of each other, right? And those are actually too short. So I'm going to make them a little longer in a couple areas, okay? And then so now that I've done that again, let's actually add a little bit more up here. Right there. And a bit there. Okay, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to brush it again. Actually, you know what I did wrong? After the highlights, what do? We add the darker shadows. Okay. So now we're getting the sense of fur. We've got 2 layers of light. So we've got lights and darks kind of packing up on top of themselves in lines. So now I've got that. Now, another thing is this needs to be much darker back here. So I'm going to take care of this really quickly. Okay, this is a 2B pencil right now is what I'm using. Okay. And now I'm going to brush this, and I'm actually going to pull some of the 2B into that, the 2B up here because it's darker, into that. This is actually 2B as well, but okay. So now what I want to do, this is where the Tombow comes in. Now I'm going to start pulling out little tiny bits, like such. Now this is actually in shadow, so I don't want it to be too overwhelming and brilliant or bright or anything like that. And now note that the hairs have gotten a lot shorter. So, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to pull out a couple of them that are going to be a little brighter. I think they give a sense of, oh, fur, you know, when you do that. And they don't all necessarily go the same direction, although mostly they do. So they kind of like go out like this, if you will, a lot. And I just kind of add them where I think they should go. So there's that. Now, now that I've done that, what I would do normally is, or I should say what I'm going to do later is I'm going to start refining that area. But for now, that's basically the general value that I'm going to want for that area. But I will say I'm going to play with this just a little bit here because I do want to capture some of this. Oh, after that, after the, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. After the final one with the Tombow, that's where I'm going to come back here with the HB because this HB is much sharper. Okay, mechanical pencil. It's not as dark and soft as the 2B. Okay. You know, it might look like it's coming as dark, but that's because it's more refined. It's a more a sharp line. Okay, so add that in there. And I kind of overdid it, I think, with that. So here's another thing. Okay, I overdid it. What do I do now that I've overdone it? Well, I'm going to grab this and say, you know what? We're just not going to have that layer be the final layer. We're going to go over it again. Rather than trying to fix that layer, I'm going to cover it with another layer. And again, this time, what we'll do is we're going to pull out the Tombow. And we're going to start pulling out those lines. And part of what I'm going to do this time is rather than the HB, which didn't seem to be working as well, I'm going to try the 2H, which is a lighter pencil. It's a harder lead. I want to pull out certain kinds of details, right? I don't want it to overwhelm the picture. And all I'm really doing is just sort of hitting alongside some of those areas that I have popped out with the highlighter. And so it kind of looks a little bit more like it's a furry kind of, I should probably check this and see what it looks. You can't even see that, can you? Oops. Okay, but it really does look better. What it's worth, I don't know if you can see it very well if I do this. Nope, doesn't matter. So, okay, so you can't really see, but you get an idea, hopefully, of how I do this. You're layering on the fur. So this whole thing with the fur, this is not a matter of I've drawn the fur in and left it at that. It's I've drawn the fur in one layer, drawn the fur in 2 layers, drawn the fur in 3 layers. And you're looking at just about everywhere having at least 2 layers, probably 3 or more. Probably 3, possibly more, I should say. And so that's kind of how that. This is why we're up to 8 hours on this, which is a lot longer. So you can kind of see I've been actually working for a half hour here, and we've done what, a little bit there. We did a little bit. Oops. Okay, Lou's bumping against the camera, and we haven't gone very far. That's another half hour. But anyway, and just realizing that it's a half hour tells me that I should probably wrap up this little video because, yeah, I've rambled for a half hour and you got to see me draw. I hope that you found this to be kind of fun because I think it's fun to do myself. And I plan on keep doing this even if it doesn't get as, overly popular. I'm okay with it not being overly popular. But anyway, I guess that's it for now. I'm still working on the tiger, and it looks like I'm probably going to be working on the tiger for a while. So anyway, until next time, I guess I will see you guys later. Have fun. Bye-bye.